The California Air Resources Board is bucking calls to be more transparent ahead of a key vote next month. They're considering updating the state's low carbon fuel standards, and that move is expected to raise gas prices. The thing is, the board won't say by how much.
Yeah, that's created some frustration. KCRA 3's Capitol correspondent Ashley Zavala spent a week trying to get CARB to talk, and she joins us now with where we are.
Golston, in an effort to understand what gas prices will soon look like in California, we have spent the last 7 days asking the Air Resources Board to sit down and do an interview with us. The board is an unelected group of people appointed by the governor. It's been inconsistent on the estimated cost to consumers at the gas pump on that upcoming vote, which is happening 3 days after the election in November. The governor and lawmakers from both parties have called on the board to be more transparent, but it's not happening.
To the degree that they should provide more, I'm for more transparency, absolutely.
That's what Governor Newsom said after I told him the California Air Resources Board ignored my first email to them last week, asking about the potential impacts of its upcoming vote on its low-carbon fuel standards. The LCFS program will financially impact the oil and gas industry, meaning higher prices are likely at the gas pump. Aside from the governor, Republican state lawmakers also urged more transparency in a letter to the board this week, requesting they delay the vote and be upfront about what the new standards will mean for California drivers.
Can we have a breather? Can we know how this is going to impact working Californians?
The board has hardly followed these calls, ignoring our repeated requests for an interview over the course of a week and only willing to provide written statements. The board has not been able to keep its story straight about what prices might look like. Last year, it said 47 cents per gallon, but walked that number back when it outraged the public.
We need to know how much this is going to cost.
Then, when pressed by lawmakers last month,
the most salient data that we have is the self-reported data by the refiners themselves to CEC under new regulations. And it's not even close to 47 cents. It's much, much lower than that.
5 cents?
If I remember correctly, I think it's between 8 and 10 cents.
And in written statements to us this week, CARB said it isn't aware of a model that can, quote, accurately capture the complexities behind gas prices, including how oil producers pass down costs at the pump.
We're not saying that these programs are not meritorious. They are.
We checked in with the leader of the Western States Petroleum Association about the cost estimate.
From where you're sitting at WISPA, what could that number be, just as it relates to LCFS?
I thought their analysis on the 47 cents was realistic. To, at this point in time, not have that same positioning on being transparent with these numbers is surprising.
The Air Resources Board has faced criticism from lawmakers from both parties this year for a lack of responsiveness.
Republican or Democrat, when a legislator sends a letter to any regulatory agency, they should respond. It's been 4 months.
I do think it's unacceptable that anybody, regardless Democrat or Republican, should have the courtesy.
Aside from the LCFS issue, lawmakers are also frustrated by the board's lack of transparency on an alternative blend of gasoline known as E15. The board has been sitting on a report for 2 years about the blend that could help with the state's fuel supply issues and gas prices.
It is unacceptable to me. And so I yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. And I would, I think, share your assessment that for Californians watching at home, those timelines seem wholly incompatible with the sense of urgency I think many of us and many of our constituents feel.
Again, CARB's vote on the low-carbon fuel standards is set for November 8th in Riverside. Before that, though, the group does have a hearing here in Sacramento on separate business next Thursday. According to the agenda, the board is taking public comment there.
Okay, so let me see if I get this right. CARB is part of Governor Newsom's administration, right? So the legislature also has a chance to check, or the ability to check CARB's power if needed. So what are we hearing?
Yeah, we reached out to legislative leaders on this, and we did get a statement from State Senate Pro Tem Mike McGuire. He said in part that if CARB takes actions against the public's interest, the state Senate will move on a course correction. My other sources in legislative leadership tell me this transparency and slow to respond issue with CARB is problematic, especially as lawmakers next year will vote to renew California's major environmental program known as Cap and Trade. Lawmakers say they need to have this information on a variety of issues, including that alternative fuel blend E15, to make the best decisions about how to move forward with protecting the state's environment and economy at the same time. In that vote, though, on cap and trade next year, lawmakers could also look to either limit CARB's power or expand it. That vote is still fairly far out, though, from this point. We don't really know when exactly in 2025 that will happen.
Right, a lot of layers to this, but some of them really kind of work together. And if you don't have all the information, you wonder how they can make that vote.
Exactly. It'd be easier if CARB just sat down with us to talk.
Okay, well, hopefully public pressure will do that. Thank you.
Thanks.